Hi, everybody. Ezra Levant here. I'm in the British city of Birmingham, the second largest city after London. You may know Birmingham from a popular TV drama called Peaky Blinders. It's sort of a crime drama and a very charismatic lead actor. That's not what Birmingham is like today. Let me tell you what Birmingham is like today. There was a story in the newspaper the other day about local politicians here in Birmingham who are also running for public office back in Bangladesh. That's where their heart is. And in fact, there's lobbying for the British government to help pay for new airports in Pakistan. I guess what I'm saying is it's British in name, but I'm not sure if it's British in essence. I mean, the indigenous British population of Birmingham is almost a minority, and the Muslim population is growing at a very rapid rate. In the last census, it was about 40%. The census before that, it was about 20%. I have no doubt whatsoever that that trend will continue, both through natural birth rate, but also through mass immigration from places like Pakistan, Bangladesh, and elsewhere. And that has started to infuse itself in the politics here, and that's what democracy is like. If you let in millions of people from Pakistan and Bangladesh, don't be surprised if your political system starts to resemble it. And one of the things about Pakistan and Bangladesh, even though those countries have zero Jews living in them, is that they're inherently anti-Semitic. It's just a fact. And so the local politics here in Birmingham has taken that turn. And so when there was an exhibition game in the Europa League, that's what it's called, the Europa Football League, between Aston Villa, which is the name of their local football team, and an Israeli football team called Tel Aviv Maccabi Tel Aviv, the local politicians decided to pounce and to protest and to try and get that game canceled, saying, incredibly, that the Jewish fans of this Tel Aviv team were violent and posed a threat to the Muslim population here in Birmingham. You heard me right. I did not invert that. They actually said that the Jews were going to riot and put the Muslims in danger.
Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, said the decision's wrong. He said, we won't tolerate anti-Semitism on our streets. You welcomed the decision. Who's right?
Well, he's clearly wrong. Nobody should tolerate anti-Semitism. That's a position which is consistent across the whole House of Commons, for example. Every parliamentarian will stick with that statement. We all condemned what happened in Manchester. That was clearly anti-Semitic, but we cannot conflate anti-Semitism when we look at what some of these fans did in Amsterdam in 2024. The vile chants of racism and hatred, the chants that there are no schools left in Gaza because there are no children left in Gaza. We're talking about violent fans, and I think the Prime Minister should stay out of operational matters. That's not a matter for him sitting in number 10 Downing Street. It's a matter for the local police teams here in Birmingham to make an assessment.
Unfortunately, incredibly, unsurprisingly, the police and the football authorities went along with that and banned any fans from Tel Aviv Maccabi to attend. Normally in games like this, where there's international, people travel and follow their team and they cheer for their team. Here they actually banned the Jewish supporters, the Israelis and others who would support Tel Aviv Maccabi, which would be disproportionately Jewish. That did not sate their anger. Many Muslim politicians went on demanding that the Israeli athletes themselves be forbidden from attending. Here's some of those Muslim politicians, some of whom, by the way, I should tell you, ran for public office on a Lend Your Vote to Gaza campaign. The leading parties in the UK are the Labour Party, which is now the government, the Conservative Party, which is the official opposition, and the Reform Party, this is the up-and-coming party of Nigel Farage. In about half a dozen ridings around the UK, the Muslim vote is so large that a Muslim-first candidate won with the phrase, "Lend Gaza your vote." And don't be surprised if they try to purge anything Jewish or Israeli.
Everyone over the age of 18 has to serve in the Israeli army if they live there. It's the law. If they don't do it, then they can go to prison for this. Which means that the IDF players that are coming to Birmingham, that are coming to Aston Villa, have in their lifetimes, if they're over 18, which most of them are, have served in the IDF, have been complicit in the genocide, have been part of this occupying army, because that's why I call them the Israeli occupation forces. So we can't have these people in Birmingham, can we? We can't have them in Aston, can we? It just doesn't make sense. They need to be banned from football. They need to be banned from all competitions, and FIFA needs to intervene.
Let me show you a video that was filmed one or two nights ago and released yesterday. I think this is a terrifying video, but a beautifully produced, a propaganda video for sure. And it actually reminded me stylistically of the ISIS recruitment videos. Here, take a look at this. Well, in the face of these shenanigans, two things happened. As I mentioned, some of the Muslim activists in town wanted to go much further, and why wouldn't they? They saw that they could push around the football league. They saw they could push around the police. Why not become emboldened and push further? So they said they would have a huge rally here at the football game against Israel. At the same time, a smaller group of people said they wanted to rally to prove that Jews could go wherever they want to in the UK, and that Birmingham would not become a no-go zone for the Jews. Here's Ahmed Yaqub, one of these activists, calling for people to come out en masse. Take a look.
On the day of the match, we will be here joining the many groups that are protesting, and I'm sure we're making enough noise to show them our disgust with the Israeli establishment.
We need to unite because we need to send a clear message to the Israeli establishment that we will not stand with any sort of genocide, and we will stand with the Palestinians. Netanyahu will know and will receive a strong message when Maccabi Tel Aviv does not play at Villa.
By the way, that's the same lawyer who represents Muslim men who beat up policewomen in an atrocious case at Manchester Airport. And he has also advice for people who want to carry bats around with them, which is carry a glove with you too, so you can tell police the bat isn't for hurting people. I don't know if you've ever seen this.
Have a bat in your car, but you can't demonstrate that you have a sporting event. You can get into trouble with the police and the prosecution and see yourself in court for possession of an offensive weapon. So if you do have a baseball bat, for example, for a sporting event, then make sure it is clear and you have other equipment with it as well. Otherwise, it will be difficult for you to show that you have a reasonable excuse to have this bat. Always remember, there's a defense for every offense.
Yeah, so it seems like a really nice guy. On the other hand, there were some Jews saying, hey, don't push us around. There's only about 2,000 or 3,000 Jews in all of Birmingham. It's not even 1% of the population. But some of them said, hey, we're still in a free country, aren't we? We're going to have a counter-protest. And that's what I wanted to go to. I wanted to go and see the counter-protest because I've been to massive anti-Semitic pro-Hamas rallies before. I've seen that. But I wanted to see what the pushback looks like for Jews who would be slowly extinguished, not through violence, although there is violence in this country, but through just abuse and hectoring and defamation and denormalization. What does that look like? That's one of the things I came here for. And I have to say, it was very sad. The average age of the people at this counter-protest was about 65. There was only about 50 of them, and they had to be outnumbered, I don't know, 2 to 1, 3 to 1 by police for their own protection. Here's some of my visit and conversations at that counter-protest. Ezra Levant here for Rebel News. I am in Birmingham. I'm at a counter-protest, the massive Islamist protest that's happening a few hundred yards away. The reason for the protest and the counter-protest is the Israeli football team, or soccer, as we would say in North America, is playing the local Birmingham team here in Birmingham, UK. Birmingham has a massive Muslim population, and Muslim politicians managed to convince, terrify, threaten, whatever you want to say, the Israeli team into not allowing Israeli fans to come to the stadium. And that sort of spread into any pro-Israel fans, which include Jewish people. Local activists, including local politicians who appeal to the Islamist base, I mean, it's a very Muslim city, have called for mass protests, even though the Jewish fans were banned. They want the Jewish team itself banned. Really what we're talking about here is whether or not the UK becomes a no-go place for Jews. Now, obviously not the whole UK, but places like Birmingham, where 30-40% of the population is Muslim. And even if only 1 in 10 of those is radicalized and willing to commit certain acts, well, that's enough to terrify the community. More than 1,000 police have been deployed tonight. As you can see at this Jewish counter demonstration, there's only about maybe 100 people, and that's including journalists and security. I myself am for security because who knows what's expected. We're going to do a march, and police, there's got to be 100 police out front there, will do their best to keep the Jews and the pro-Israel side separate from the pro-Hamas side. I'll keep you posted as I go. I'll have all my reports at rebelfieldreports.com. I get the feeling that this very small number of pro-Israel supporters will be kept far away from the pro-Hamas supporters, but we'll show you how that looks. They're trying to protect folks associated with the Jewish community and the anti-Semitic community. You can see there's a sort of a gated section there with police at the doors. That's where some speeches were held about 10 minutes ago. On this side, you can see a ton of police as well, and the Aston Villa fans. And Aston Villa fans, I've been able to talk to a few of them about football. I know almost nothing about the sport, I must confess, but I just needed a break from the politics for a minute. Everyone who I've spoken to here is happy to have the game. I guess it makes sense. If you're here to watch the game between Aston Villa and Tel Aviv, you're probably cool with the game between Aston Villa and Tel Aviv, or you wouldn't be here to see it. I think the number one thing I was picking up from Aston Villa fans, including the ones who didn't want to talk to me online, were, this is just football. What are you doing dragging it into an international incident? And that's true. I mean, that's the whole point about sport, right? That's the whole point of the Olympics, is to find some common, it's like music or something. It should transcend politics. But, things are fairly peaceful at this close to the actual stadium. I spoke to a journalist who identified himself to me as a Jewish journalist for the local Jewish newspaper. And obviously he himself had not been attacked in any way. He was not visibly Jewish, but he said that there was some menacing and threatening comments. And really that's all it takes to drive severely normal people, families away. And I think there's a kind of soft ethnic cleansing going on. I mean, I think it's not just the Jewish community. I think there's some white flight in Birmingham and other places in the UK. I know it. I can see it. But I'm glad I came here today. I have to say the size of the counter-protest was very small. It was less than 100 people. There were almost as many security, and there were more police than there were counter-protesters. And that makes me a little sad. Now, maybe some of it is just despondency, or maybe some people were afraid to come out. But I'm glad I was here, and there was an enormous expense an effort by the police to make this counter-protest go and to allow this match to happen. And by the way, they're not done yet. The match has not happened. Who knows what shenanigans will happen inside the stadium. And then the Israelis have to get on a bus and make it to their hotel and be safe there. So the night is not yet over. And I hate to be dark, but I remember reading about the 1972 Olympic Games in Munich. It's a terrible thing to see. Now, I had worn a stab-proof vest, and I had 4, actually turned into 5 bodyguards with me, because I thought I would encounter the ruffians on the pro-Hamas side. But because I had chosen to see what the Jewish counter-protesters said, I was actually within a wall of steel and people, as so many police were sent to protect those handful of Jews. It was actually an enormous undertaking by police. Let me show you a little bit of that, including some of the speech. We're about to be escorted out of this area. I think there's got to be 100 cops. There's probably 100 cops that are going to escort the pro-Israel and pro-Jewish supporters out of here. It's just actually an enormous deployment of manpower.
And open up this area, please, to let them come out. Graham, move yours forward a few paces just to give some more space. Sorry. And please, ignore the noise. Ignore the noise. 5-0, forward! Forward! Watch your feet, everyone!
Thank you.
Stop. Every other rest. Come across.
Guys, going across the road now.
Yeah.
They want to get a chicken burger over here.
Forward. Andy, come here. Keep together.
Back again. Back again.
I think you want to go to the car party again. That's fine. Anyone who does want to
Not from round.
5-0!
I was, but
Well, while I was with the Jewish dissidents, there were, I'd say, a couple of thousand pro-Hamas protesters, and they were just sort of shouting at everybody. There weren't really any. They weren't inside the stadium. The people inside the stadium obviously paid for a ticket and they wanted to see the soccer match. But those outside, well, they started shouting Allah Akbar and the like. Here, take a look at that.
They're now shouting Allah Akbar. He's inciting it. He's inciting violence. He's inciting violence. inciting violence, he's being told off by his community.
Getting mad over there.
We got a lefty over here trying to...
The police just assaulted me. I don't think the football fans like you, know.
One of the heartening things for me was to see the Aston Villa fans shouting back at these Palestinians who, I can assure you, do not go to the soccer matches. It's actually a very interesting cultural segment of the UK that goes to soccer matches, football matches. It's really the last bastion of indigenous white British culture. I mean, UK culture in 2025 is so varied. There's a whole school of rap. There's many different multicultural mixes, but football, or soccer as we would call it, remains sort of the indigenous British thing. So they were having none of it. Here, take a look at some of the back and forth between the pro-Palestine, pro-Hamas protesters and just some regular salt-of-the-earth Brits going back and forth. There were a couple of arrests today. I'm aware of 3 of them. One was our friend Young Bob, the 17-year-old reporter, who was arrested because he was having a bit of a debate with a Muslim imam, and the cops said that was too provocative.
So he's arresting young Bob. Repeating the picture he didn't. Yeah, laugh at it, Bob. Take it. We'll take it. We've got to test the young soul. We'll take the arrest. Yeah. And him man wanted to talk to a Christian. That's what it was. What is wrong with that? So we're not allowed to have religious discussion.
Absolutely disgusting. Disgusting. As you can see, everyone in my chat, you're all a fan of Bob. You all know Bob.
Yes, he is. Yeah, and he got invited to talk to them.
Another arrest was Maher Tusi, who is a Persian-born, freedom-oriented pundit, who was arrested as well.
I'm going to ask you to go on the grass area. Okay, to prevent a breach of the peace of
I didn't want to have a conversation. Yeah, I didn't want to have a conversation. I would. I don't want. No, it's not.
I should tell you that these screaming pro-Hamas protesters who were shouting at Aston Villa fans, they weren't arrested. Of course not. What, are you crazy? But Young Bob and Maher Tusi were. Also, a lady who unfurled a Star of David flag. I mean, doesn't she know that's Islamophobic? I tell you, we're about 5 minutes away from that being called Islamophobic here in the UK. There were some scraps outside, and I didn't see them myself. And I think that was a function of my decision to be with the counter-protesters. It was a little bit weird walking through a city like you had to be protected from people jumping out of the corners to smash you. But that's exactly how it was. In fact, walking from where the counter-protest had been back to the train station and parking lot, etc., the police had to escort us, and it was fascinating to watch them escort us through a heavily Muslim neighborhood where in every store, every convenience store, every shisha restaurant, every barber shop, there were young Muslim men who were staring at these Jews. And really what the police were doing is making sure that those young men didn't come pouring out into the streets to beat the living daylights out of the Jews. And you may say that's speculation on my part, but I watched as police talked to these Muslim men and sort of said, go in or go out, don't be in the doorway. Like, you could see their whole effort was to stop the Jews from being attacked as they walked through the neighborhood. And by the way, it's almost every neighborhood in Birmingham that's like that. It was sort of weird being kettled that way by police. That's one explanation for what happened. We were brought to the stadium and put in a large area that I think can only be called a cage. Here, take a look at some of that. You can see behind me, I am outside the stadium of the British football team Aston Villa in their hometown of Birmingham. That's the second largest city in the UK after London. You can see an Israeli flag there. The only reason that flag is flying is because there is a wall of police between this small crowd of pro-Israel and Jewish and friends of the Jews who are counter-protesting what happened in the stadium tonight. In short, there's a match between Aston Villa, hometown team, and the away team being Tel Aviv Maccabi, as the name Tel Aviv gives away. It's an Israeli team, and it's part of an exhibition-style tournament or whatever. But local Islamic extremists had a petition and demanded that the government ban any fans of the Tel Aviv team from attending on the preposterous accusation that the Jews would cause riots. You know those Jews and their riots. So the team actually banned the Jews, banned Israelis. I don't know how full the match is inside. I'm outside, and of course, the protesters here are separated from what I expect is tens of thousands of pro-Palestinian protesters that were whipped up by the same activists that had the Jewish fans banned. That is why the West Midlands Police has deployed 1,000 cops tonight. Well, hang on, I thought the threat to security was from those Jewish fans that are banned. No, I don't think anyone believes that. There are Islamic extremists in Birmingham, and I'm not just talking about jihadists, I'm talking about people who would just get into fisticuffs and pummel the Jews if they were to come into contact. There's only about 2,000 Jews in the whole city, and much of the city is overwhelmingly Islamic. I went out for a bit of a walk today, and I thought, oh, I'm in an Islamic neighborhood. No, that's just called the neighborhood. It's a demographic story. Birmingham is further down that road than any place in Canada, say, other than Mississauga. Further down the road than any place in America other than Dearborn, Michigan. But as long as mass immigration continues to bring in people from places like Pakistan, Bangladesh, Syria, Afghanistan, places like that, expect more and more, well, anti-Semitism. Unfortunately, when you import people from endemically anti-Semitic countries, that's who they are. They don't suddenly adopt Western values on the short flight into the UK. I came here because I wanted to see if Birmingham is being turned into a no-go zone for Jews. And you can still go, but you're behind a metal fence, and you need hundreds of police to keep you safe. Just feet on the other side there, you can see the fans. There's someone holding court. I presume he's an anti-Israel activist, judging by his, what I can hear. But there's a fence between us. Peaceful, harmonious countries don't have fences between ethnic groups. That's a sectarianism that has come through mass immigration in the main. It's very sad to see. I think the Jews of Birmingham are subject to a soft ethnic cleansing. They're not being murdered, they're not being genocided, they're just being driven out as part of a larger white flight from cities like Birmingham that used to be incredible pillars of the UK and now, frankly, have more in common with Pakistan. For Rebel News, I'm Ezra Levant. You can see all my reports from Birmingham. Go to rebelfieldreports.com. So in the end, the game went ahead and Aston Villa beat Tel Aviv Maccabi. I'm not surprised by that. I mean, these British football teams really are outstanding, and the Israelis play with some passion, but they're not going to likely beat a team of the caliber of Aston Villa. I did manage to talk to a couple of actual Brits about football. And I have to say it was a bit of a relief, and I can see why they were so angry about the politicization of their sport. I mean, sport is supposed to be a harmonious thing that we can all agree on, even if we have political differences, religious differences, linguistic differences. Like, that's one of the ideas of the Olympics, isn't it? It's sort of like music. It can appeal to every people of different backgrounds. And that's precisely why it's being hijacked by the pro-Palestinian extremists in this town, because they don't want harmony or amity with Israel, and they want Palestine injected in every damn thing. It's interesting, the flag wars in the UK. You saw in that advertisement these masked Hamas supporters putting up their Palestine flags everywhere. Those have never been condemned by the Prime Minister or any authorities that I know of. But the British resistance, and there's really an awakening of the indigenous British people in the last 6 months, putting up either the Union Jack or the Cross of St. George, which is the flag of England within Great Britain. It's sort of a counter-revolution through flags. And what's incredible to me is so many city councils take down the British flag, the Union Jack, the English flag, the Cross of St. George, but leave up the Palestine flag. So I tell you, it's got to be tough being a Jew in Birmingham. And I see these same things in Canada, but not as progressed. But we're not far behind. Today I saw a group of extremists break into a private function and violently assault some Israelis. I don't even know what the event was for, but these are pro-Palestine extremists. Now, most of them were actually Canadian, not new immigrants from Muslim countries, which shows you the double problem that Canada has. You have these extreme woke leftists in an alliance with radical Islam. It's actually scary.
Jonathan, stop! Get out of here! Get out! Get out! Get off this property! Get out!
Our city! We refuse to allow
Jonathan!
in our city!
Call 911! Call the police! Call 911!
Our city!
Call 911! Call Jonathan!
Call our city!
Call 911!
Free Palestine! Free Palestine! Free
Call 911!
Palestine!
They're waiting for
Free
us.
Palestine!
Get out! Get out! Get out! Get out! This is private property! Get off our property!
Oh my God, it's really bad.
And I think it's being allowed to happen in Canada in a similar way to it being allowed to happen in Birmingham. What I'm saying is, by giving the bigots an inch, they proceed to take a mile. I think that's what's happened in Canada over the last 2 years, and it's what's been happening in the UK over the last 20, to be honest. I asked some members of the Jewish community in that little cage we were in if they've gotten over their love for immigration. I think Jews typically are liberal, or have been. And even now, even as Israel is being banned and the Jews are being driven out of Birmingham and maybe one day driven out of all of England, some of these liberal Jews just could not bring themselves to say, no, we shouldn't have immigration from places that hate Jews. I mean, there's some sort of a suicidal gene of suicidal altruism that Jewish liberals still have. I don't know, I find it very, very depressing as a Jew myself. Anyways, I'm glad I came out here. I wonder if I should have gone out and about to where the pro-Hamas protesters met the Brits. Part of me would have loved that, especially with my new stab jacket on and my 5 bodyguards. But actually, I really wanted to see what Jews in a declining population look like and sound like when they're under attack. And frankly, it was extremely sad. It made me nostalgic for a Britain I never knew, but I knew existed. My own grandmother was born in the UK, and I can only imagine how safe and tolerant and happy it was for her, and how different it is now. I don't think there's any lessons to be learned from what I would sort of call a pitiful gathering. I think the answer lies with the more muscular approach taken by my friend Tommy Robinson, which is why I came out the UK this week in the first place, as you know, on Tuesday. He got the sentence back. He was the verdict. He was acquitted in the bizarre Terrorism Act. I don't know if you followed that, but Tommy Robinson was charged under the Terrorism Act because he wouldn't give police his cell phone password without a search warrant. So he had a whole trial under the Terrorism Act for that. He won. But these people who were screaming Allah Akbar today and throwing things at Aston Villa fans, none of them, I can assure you, none of them will be charged under the Terrorism Act or likely with anything else.